No. I should move my fan closer. Hi, Cal. I do like how the... Oh. I do like how the title screen changes. Makes it feel pretty dynamic. Alright. Well, never expected this. Who'd have thought we'd be back here again so soon? Here on a study tour of Great Britain, with the intention of learning the country's legal practices. Yes, Susato, I'm aware. In order to research the latest courtroom procedures here, we need as much court experience as possible. Well, yes, I suppose that's true, but for the person on the dock, it may well be his or her one and only time in court. It could be life-changing. In which case, treating it as research may seem a little crass. Oh. When you put it like that, you're quite right. Good morning! Ah, Mr. Natsume. Good morning. Oh dear, are you alright? Your eyes are terribly bloodshot. The early bird catches the worm, as they say here in Britain. Yes, I heard that expression. But I really don't want to catch a worm. So I tried desperately not to wake up early, but I was so worried I couldn't catch a wink. And now I'm absolutely exhausted as a result. Do all literary people take things so literally? Thank you for putting your faith in us today, Mr. Natsume. I wish I had 9 lives. My whole future hangs in the balance. I'm too terrified to tremble. You're trembling right there, sir. I can't do this. I can't take it. Although, locum student Mr. Naruto Esquire. Yes? I caught a glimpse of the public gallery as I walked by the courtroom. It looked like the opening night of the opera. There were so many people. I had no idea my case was such a notorious affair here in London. Oh, neither did I. We have one piece of evidence. Do you know why that might be, Miss Susato? I'm sorry, Mr. Naruto, but I have no idea. So that all-knowing look on your face is just coincidence, then, is it? Don't hide the truth from me. It's because of the Reaper, isn't it? Lord Van Zykes? Is that right, Miss Susato? I purchased as many different newspapers as I could find this morning, and yes, Lord Van Zykes is on the front page of every one. I knew it. Sometime after the prosecutor was dubbed the Reaper of the Bailey, he stopped appearing in court, it seems. It's been several years now, in fact, until the day before yesterday. Yeah, Inspector Gregson told us something similar, didn't he? Trial 2 days ago marked Lord Van Zykes' first return. A return to the courtroom after a very long hiatus. The trial of Magnus McGilded. Ugh, a harrowing experience that was. I believe that appearance made even greater waves here in the capital than today's. But you wouldn't have realized, of course, having only just arrived in the country. Why is the Reaper back in the Bailey so soon for what appears to be a mundane murder? That's the question the papers are asking. They're all speculating various answers. Mundane? Mundane! It's the most significant saga of the century to some of us. Oh dear. I meant no offense, Mr. Natsume, but that is how the papers are describing it. Isn't it, like, did the person die? Well, lest we also forget the fact it could spark an international incident. Obviously, the reappearance of this infamous prosecutor has caught people's attention. But there's another blatant similarity with the trial of 2 days ago. Yes, I agree. Locum student Mr. Naruhodo Esquire. It's you. Me? Well, I suppose that's true. Both times it is you who stands against this legendary prosecutor. It can only mean that you're friends with the Reaper. Please, I don't rub shoulders with Deathbringers. I'm afraid that there's really only one other explanation. It can only be another example, Mr. Naruhodo, of your uncommon bad luck. Thanks. Thanks for that. Oh, this is just my luck. Why must I be represented by a man with such frail fortune? By the least lucky lawyer alive! Let's not forget that it was you who asked me to represent you. Yes, it's true that I'm just a student, new to London, with little in the way of experience or skills, or luck. But I promise you this. I will fight your corner until the bitter end, and I will believe in you, Mr. Natsume. Oh, benevolent locum student, Mr. Naruhodo Esquire. You're not alone here with us, Mr. Natsume. Whatever happens, we will always be on your side. Oh, benevolent non-locum assistant, Miss Mikotoba Esquires. I am in your debt, forever! I shall never forget this kindness for as long as I live. Mr. Natsume, counsel for the defense. The court session is about to begin. Kindly make your way into the courtroom at once. Alright then. It's time. Let's go. Yes! This is it. My second appearance in a British courtroom. My second trial against the Reaper. I hope you're watching over me, Kazuma. Because this time, I won't let my faith waver. I'll believe in my client to the last. Just like you believed in me. I believe I can do this now. I'm ready for this fight. Hold on. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session. I now call upon the counsels for prosecution and defense to declare their willingness to proceed. The prosecution is fully prepared, my lord. The defense is ready, my lord. The Nipponese are a truly fascinating breed. Sorry, what? Lord Strongheart has told me all about you. That you're a student who arrived in London but 2 days ago. A mere amateur. Do you have a point? Being a compatriot, you feel compelled to try and help the accused, I suppose. Typical Nipponese arrogance. Forgive me, but I do not believe arrogance is an appropriate description. Susato-san. After all, at our previous encounter, the defendant was found to be innocent. Very true, and most fascinating, if dark trial it was, too. The tragic conclusion came later, of course. Here's to the acquitted and his unfortunate, violent end. Is that the banker? Thank you, counsels. I see both sides are in fine fettle. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, are you ready to carry out your duties here in court as impartial members of the public? You never know when you might be down on your luck, but I believe in fair play for everyone. Well, I must warn you, I'm rather more ruthless than I appear. Well, not me. What you see is what you get. I'm a peace-loving fellow. I'm afraid to say, I think it's quite possible that mustache foreigner did the deed. Jane? Come on, what are we waiting for? No doubt he did it anyway. Yeah, sorry, didn't quite catch that. Very well, let us proceed. Your opening statement, if you please, Lord Van Zykes. Very recently, Great Britain signed an alliance with a rising power in the Far East. The accused in the dock today is a student from that same land, a certain Mr. Soseki Natsume. And while our country has extended this foreign student the warmest of welcomes, regrettably, the kindness has not been returned. In fact, the student is accused of a most sinister act. Of plunging a knife into the back of an innocent woman who was doing nothing but walking down the street. A knife crime? I tell you from bitter experience, those are the worst. Bloody oath they are. Just look at that sallow complexion and short stature. He's one... He's one of those dreadful Japanese. Come on, let's get this over with. With me now, everyone. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, sorry, didn't quite catch that. Pray, forgive the discourtesy of smashing my hollow chalice here in this great chamber. Allow me to call the first witness to the stand. Gregson! We love Gregs. Your name and occupation, please. Yes, sir. Tobias Gregson, Detective Inspector at Scotland Yard. Would you please summarize the events of the case for the court, Inspector? The victim is thought to be a young woman in her 20s by the name of Olive Green. I beg your pardon? Thought to be? Yes, having been stabbed in the back by her attacker's knife, the victim fell unconscious. That was 3 days ago now. She's been comatose ever since. What? So they don't even know who she is for sure? Comatose. I see. Her life is not in danger? Fortunately for the Eastern student, the charge will not be murder. Pray, elaborate on the details, Inspector. Sir, if I could ask everyone to look at this street map. As I mentioned, the incident took place 3 days ago, around 5 in the afternoon. It happened on the pavement running alongside Briar Road, a wide thoroughfare for horse-drawn vehicles. It had not long since stopped snowing as the victim, Miss Green, was walking down the street. Out of the blue, she was approached from behind by the accused and stabbed in the back. Luckily, the young lady's life was spared, and she's currently being treated in one of the city's hospitals. But being unconscious as she is, we've been unable to take a statement from her, of course. This is a case filed with everything we know about the victim so far. Ma'am Sunscreen. Thank you, Inspector. The court will accept the documents as evidence, if you please. What of the weapon that was used? Sir, I have that here. It was removed from the victim's back. Ouch. That big thing is starting to make me scared to walk down the street now. With a heavy blade like that, almost anyone would have been able to stab the poor woman. Even the scragged-looking Soseki-san, I believe. I suppose. Common or garden jackknife, I would say. Rather nondescript. Thank you, Inspector. The court accepts the blade as evidence. Now then, what do we know of the motive? Money or valuables, I presume? From what we can tell by looking at the woman's possessions, it seems like she's a poor student herself. Hard to imagine she would have anything much worth pinching, my lord. I see. Well, in that case, are we looking at some deep-seated resentment towards the victim? I'm afraid I couldn't say. Apart from visiting secondhand bookshops, the defendant, Mr. Natsume, doesn't appear to get out much. At this moment in time, we haven't been able to establish any sort of connection between him and the victim.
Yes!
If theft and grievance had been ruled out as a motive, what reason could Mr. Natsume possibly have had for stabbing the young woman? Yet you arrested the man in spite of that, in a totally unjustified and heavy-handed way.
Objection!
There's people back there! Pray forgive the discourtesy of flinging a freshly uncorked bottle into the public gallery, but your words have soured its hallowed bouquet. For it is you, my learned friend, who is being heavy-handed here. What? Scotland Yard does not arrest people without good cause. That should be beyond question. Inspector Gregson, the prosecution calls for your formal testimony. Explain to the court precisely why the constabulary came to arrest the Nipponese student. Yes, sir. As I said, it was 5 o'clock in the afternoon when the incident occurred. There was an unusually light fog. Visibility was reasonably good, and there was no one else about but the victim and the accused. Out of the blue, the victim was stabbed from behind and subsequently collapsed on the pavement. The accused ran off, scattering his belongings all over the floor. Those being a number of old books he just bought. He was on his way home from a bookshop, it seems. It was just a matter of working out who the books belonged to, and we found the bloke to arrest him. Oh shit! No, probably not. Yes, my lord, I have a photograph here of the scene of the crime taken immediately after the incident. Ah, I can clearly see the books to which you're referring. I will take that photographic print as evidence, please, Inspector. Once we start cross-examination, I'm gonna check the, evidence. You Nipponese are a spineless breed, too cowardly to admit defeat. Denying everything despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Well, forgive me, Lord Sykes, but the defendant is not denying everything, as you put it. What are you doing? Do go on. Mr. Natsume has admitted to playing some part in the incident. Isn't that right, Mr. Naruhodo? Well, now you mention it. When you visited him in the prison yesterday, he did tell us what had all happened. As I was walking along that accursed pavement, I could make out the sole silhouette of another ahead of me. A woman, wearing a green overcoat she was, just as I went to overtake her. She suddenly let out a little scream and collapsed onto the cold, hard slabs of stone at my feet. I was terrified. I had to get away from there. So I ran, as fast as my legs would carry me, back to my accursed lodgings. A green overcoat? Well, that's exactly what the woman in that print is wearing. Oh my, a photographic print in full color. What will the world come up with next? The defendant has done nothing more than admit he fled the scene of a terrifying incident. That does not mean he's guilty of the heinous crime of stabbing the woman in the back. There was nobody else there at the time, just the two of them, the victim and the accused. In other words, there is no one else who could possibly have stabbed the woman. In fact, the accused concedes. It seems this cross-examination could prove to be pivotal, counsel. Proceed, please. Yes, my lord. I have to use this cross-examination to turn the tables here. It's our only chance. Hey, Gregson. How you doing? Alright. Let's see. The tip seems to be gone. Look here, just at the tip. A small piece of the blade appears to be missing. You're right. All spotted, Mr. Sato. I wonder what that could have happened to it. Yes. You don't think it could still be lodged in the victim, do you? Oh dear, I do hope not. It sounds terribly painful. That just closes it again. Light fog, you say? Well, light for London. You can see the opposite side of the street for once. Not much farther, though. That's light, is it? Around these parts, yes. Not something I'd expect a Japanese fellow like yourself to know, of course. I read that London is famous for its fog. But in my country, people usually imagine that gives the city a rather beautiful appearance. How quaint. Yes, well, it's not something us Londoners tend to romanticize, as I expect you can appreciate. I see. This time of year, the fog causes a large number of accidents, especially when it's heavy. Sometimes you can't even see your own hand at the end of your arm. Indeed, the other day I was very nearly trampled by horses before I could see the carriage they were pulling. Susato-san and I should definitely remember to stop, look, and listen. However, on the day that concerns us, the fog was somewhat lighter than usual. A fact no doubt lamented by the accused. How do we know that there is no one but the victim and the accused? How are you able to state that with any certainty? Quite simply, my learned friend. Because that is what the witnesses to this crime have told us. Ah yes, Inspector Gregson mentioned the witnesses yesterday, didn't he? That's right. One of them is a policeman, I believe, from Scotland Yard. That is correct, ma'am. Then we must hear their testimony. The prosecution will of course call them to the stand, should it be necessary. Wait a minute. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, in the middle of winter, it would have been dark already. No matter how light the fog might have been, no one could have seen... I'm unaware of the situation on your tiny island in the east. But here in the capital city of Great Britain, all main roads are illuminated in the night by gas streetlights. Ah. Prosecution believes there would have been ample light by which to witness the crime. Quite. Here in London, for the first time in history, mankind has completely conquered the darkness. Which means we really need to hear those witness statements. If I could just get through the fog of this cross-examination, maybe we'll be able to. From behind, you say? That's right, as you can see from this print. Yep, that is a knife in her back. And you say this poor woman, Miss Green, remains in critical condition, comatose? I'm afraid so, my lord, yes. She's being treated at Bart's. I was hopeful that she'd come around before the trial started so I could take a statement, but it wasn't to be. Yes, that is indeed a pity. It would have been most illuminating to hear the victim's own account of events. Luck is on your client's side, it seems. On the contrary, my client has been exceedingly unlucky. Your force of tone is seriously undermined by those disturbingly wide eyes, I'm afraid. Ugh. Mr. Natsume's belongings? I think you'll find it's all there in the photographic print of the crime scene. Yes, 3 books on the floor. That's right, my lord. Second-hand books they were. Irreparably damaged after falling in the snow, of course. The accused could easily have carried all 3 books in one hand, which means his other hand would have been free to wield a knife, for example. It's very clever, isn't he? What do you mean? He's made it extremely hard for you to assert that Mr. Natsume had his hands full with his books. He's managed to close the one avenue of escape we might have had before we even knew it was there. You mean to say that the defendant was holding his belongings as he thrust the knife into the woman's back? That must be what happened, my lord. Yes. What did our receipt say? 3 books.
Hold it!
Defendant apparently visits a secondhand bookshop on a daily basis. Yes, so I understand. A shop full of old English literature. I commend the accused on the lofty subject matter of his scholarly attention. The bloke's room was stacked floor to ceiling with those musty old books. Can you tell us more about the bookshop in question, please, Inspector? Well, if I must, I have to ask you to look at the street map again, I'm afraid. Bro, it's looking at a map. It's nothing bad. The closest secondhand shop to the accused belongings is here. Bourbon Books. A little place on the corner of Briar and Meerschaum Street. As it happens, the accused is currently living in the lodgings on the other side of Briar Road at the opposite end. Which means it doesn't take a genius to work out the route he would have taken home. Something like this. Local maps information has been updated. I concur with your conclusion. The defendant would certainly have to pass the scene of the crime on his way home from that particular shed. Yeah, because he listed the wrong bookstore. You got, like, Your Books, and the one over here is Bourbon. Inspector Gregson, may I ask you a favor? What? Would you kindly add the name of the bookshop to your formal testimony, please? I believe it may be of vital importance. Maybe? Oh, well, you know. I mean, yes. It could be a very important clue. Very well. Not that I can see it being of any great significance. But please revise your testimony accordingly, Inspector. Yes, sir, my lord. Whatever you say. Could the man be any more sardonic? I was about to say fuck you, but like...
Objection!
Objection! That's the better thing to say. If I could just stop you there, Inspector Gregson. Slams the table. Fuck you. What is it, sunshine? I'm a busy man, you know. This is a receipt that we found in Mr. Natsume's room. It was issued on the day of the incident and details the purchase of 3 second-hand books. And you found that in the accused's room, did you? Yes, but the point is not where the receipt was found, but the name of the shop printed on it. Go on. This receipt was issued from a bookshop called Your Books. Your Books? Y-O-R-E, I presume. Yes, my lord. So Mr. Natsume did indeed purchase a number of books at a second-hand bookshop that day. However, the bookshop in question was not Bourbon Books. Yeah? What? Inspector, do you know of this other bookshop? Yes, sir. Your Books is another second-hand bookshop not far from Bourbon Books. It's just that, well, it's such a small place that I didn't think the accused would have known about it.
Objection!
But in fact, that is the bookshop which the defendant visited on the day in question. And this receipt proves it.
Objection!
Yes. For what difference it makes. Wherever the man purchases musty tomes, it makes no difference in the final analysis. I disagree. I mean, after all, I have the street map here, if that might be of help. Well, yes, thank you. Have a look at this, please. The defendant had been returning from Bourbon Books. Then yes, he would have certainly passed the place where Miss Green was attacked. However, if you take into account the fact he was actually at another bookshop, Your Books, It may very well turn out he wouldn't have passed that location at all. Could it be true? My, it rather depends on where this other bookshop is, but I do declare it may be a possibility. This guy reminds me of that fucking, like, positive guy from 30 Rock. I think. Is that right, Mr. Lorisor? What you just said? Absolutely. It absolutely could be right. So where is this other bookshop? Inspector Gregson, where is this Your Books establishment? Well, obviously we looked into that. Turns out that Your Books is just here on the next corner of Meersham Street, going east. Okay, so we could still have theoretically gone around the corner. And there you have it, as you can clearly see now. Oh. I mean, we've now added the possibility that he went a different way. My learned Nipponese friend is obviously training to be a clown, the way he regales us with such witticisms. To your future career in the circus. Put that glass down now, or I'll put it down for you! I didn't think I needed to spell it out, but here we go. If the accused was coming home from Your Books instead of Bourbon Books, there's no doubt he still would have passed the place where the victim was stabbed. Yes, thank you, Inspector. Allow me to reiterate for my learned, if it is somewhat slow, Nipponese friend. Motherfucker, I can't even say that I beat your ass last time. Whoever the man purchased his musty tomes, it makes no difference in the final analysis. As suspected, you can't fool me, and I don't suggest you try. What'd I say, eh? I've had enough of this now. I beg your pardon? Terribly sorry, but would you mind repeating that? Mr. Naruhodo, we mustn't give up. What? What do you mean? The prosecution's assertion is correct. The members of the jury may very well decide that Mr. Natsume is guilty. Ah, she's absolutely right. You must think. You must consider the assertion just put forward by the prosecution very, very carefully. Claim he must have passed the location of the incident, but the assertion just made by the prosecution is fundamentally flawed. Explain yourself, counsel. Yes, my lord. You can see what I mean on this map. When returning for Your Books to his lodgings, Mr. Natsume could have followed the route suggested by the prosecution. However, that isn't the only conceivable route to take between the two places. If the defendant used these streets, look what happens. He arrives back at his lodgings without passing the location where the victim was attacked. Objection. Talking back to a clown is a fool's errand, of course. However, I feel compelled to point out that that route is what is commonly referred to as the long way around. Ah. On a cold winter's night, why would any man choose to take a longer route home? Well, the answer is extremely simple. He wouldn't. In other words, the accused took the obvious route back to his lodgings, as is the obvious perpetrator of the crime.
Objection.
But, aha, yes, I've got it. Obviously, you must ask the man himself. Ask Mr. Natsume which route he took home. I've already informed the court of the accused's response to such questioning. Claims he has no recollection. That's right. As I said, the bloke seems to spend his time outside wandering aimlessly from A to B. That day was no exception. He says he doesn't remember where he was or which route he took home. I don't believe this. I thank you, my learned friend, and suggest that we do not waste any more of the court's time by wandering aimlessly around this subject. Pray, what say you insightful jurors? But even if that is the case, the defense still... I agree with Lord Van Sykes wholeheartedly in every way. What? I don't believe it. Does this mean the members of the jury are completely convinced now? Very well. In that case, I hereby call upon all members of the jury to present your findings to the court.
Guilty.
Guilty. Guilty.
Guilty. Guilty. Guilty.
Jesus Christ! We haven't even gone to his witnesses. It would appear the jury's leaning is unanimous. To the insightful members of the jury, I applaud your brave resolve. You served Queen and country admirably. Mr. Naruhodo. No. Not yet. This isn't over yet. I still have one last chance to sway the opinion of the jury. I have to tip the balance of those scales the other way. I have to turn this around. Somehow. Those are the eyes of Quarry not yet willing to give up and die. So I presume you intend to wield your rights again in this trial. Rights of the defense written into antiquated British law that should have been buried long ago. Call it antiquated if you will, but it's the defense's prerogative to carry out a summation examination, if it so chooses. Very well, counsel. In accordance with the letter of the law, we shall proceed with a summation examination. Are the members of the jury ready, Mr. Foreman? Of course we're ready. I'm all too familiar with that Nipponese whippersnapper and his Ankus refusal to throw in his alley. Very well, then. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will each explain on what grounds you have determined the defendant to be guilty. Let me get my phone real quick. For pity's sake, that little Nipponese oddity already admitted himself, didn't he? If he said that the woman in green collapsed before his eyes, why, it can only have been the victim. The man wouldn't have gone around the houses on his way back home from the bookshop. Not in the winter. So the poor woman was attacked from behind, was she? How dreadful. I really don't care. Can't we just wrap this up now? I got work to be doing. Your books, yes. Nice shop, that. But bourbon books? No, not worth a visit. With only minor exceptions, the reasons for finding the defendant guilty are all too clear. When the stabbing occurred, the only two people at the scene were the victim and the accused. And the accused himself has admitted to seeing the victim in the green overcoat slink to the ground before his eyes. Furthermore, we have heard from the inspector that the defendant then fled the scene. I must say, I would have ample grounds to convict this man already. Oh dear, even the judge appears convinced of Mr. Natsume's guilt now. Why did he have to run away like that? How are we supposed to believe in some phantom attacker that no one could see? It's impossible. How can I possibly make a case for the defense? Mr. Naruhodo, this is no time for grumbling. If we want to force the trial to continue, yes, I know, you have to turn the tide. Must make the jurors change their minds. Well, 4 of them at least. Exactly. We have no choice but to forge forward. You have the floor, counsel. Begin your summation examination. Yes, my lord. We just need to keep this trial going somehow, whatever it takes. Come on, Ryunosuke. You can do it. Excuse me, but aren't you... Yes, that's right. I was in the witness stand myself just 2 days ago. Yes, I had a feeling I knew your face. Or the side of it, anyways. If I remember correctly, you're a banker, aren't you? That's right. After the gold rush down under, I came back to London to work. It was all going swimmingly until you started fossicking around. Bruce Fairplay was a man of repute. Sorry. Don't think I've forgotten how you treated me the other day. You had me and that young hatter pegged as criminals. Ah, well, you know. Water under the bridge. Now there's all sorts of rumors buzzing around. The police have been badgering me non-stop. If I could turn back the clock. Well, anyway, I don't know about the hatter, but at least I'm in the clear now. I'm free to make up my own mind about who's guilty and who isn't. Thank goodness. Oh dear, I wonder what's become of Mr. First now.
Hold it!
You're right at the time of the incident. The defendant admits having seen someone wearing a green overcoat walking ahead of him. Well, quite, that's precisely my point. Clearly that someone wearing green was the victim. And clearly that funny little Nipponese man with the disturbing mustache is the culprit. But let us not forget, madam. The defendant vehemently denies attacking the woman. Why, of course he does. If he admits to stabbing her, his life is over. The man is obviously a liver-faced coward, honestly, claiming the woman simply collapsed before his eyes. But if that's a lie as you're suggesting, do you not think he would have concocted something more credible? I really couldn't say. After all, you are foreign. Who's to say what goes through your funny little minds? I'll tell you what's going through my funny little mind right now, but you wouldn't like it. I do declare the man has already made the admission. He himself has stated that there was no one else around. Surely the conclusion is obvious. No one else could have possibly committed this awful crime. If no one else could have done it, the accused must be the man. Really, it couldn't be more simple. But you can't deny there are other routes that he could have taken back from your books. Oh, yes. Like you drew on the map, you mean? What was it? Calabash Road or something? Precisely. But it seems to me that what counts is whether the little Japanese fellow actually went that way or not. Well, yes, that's true. I mean, I'm wondering... What I'm wondering is that did... the books that fell around the woman were the same books that he actually had on his receipt. As I understand it, the accused himself doesn't remember which way he went, does he? Well, yes, that's annoyingly true. Winter nights are dark and cold, so the way I see it, you'd want to get home as quickly as possible. Well, yes. Why is all this true? So really, the only thing that makes sense is that he went home along Briar Road. I've given it a lot of thought, you know. I didn't just make up my mind on a whim that he did it. I mean, if there was some logical reason why he might have gone to the Calabash Roadway, it'd be different. I'd be happy to reconsider my position in that case. Honest, I would. Okay.
Hold it!
Whatever is the matter, young man? You're the wife of Mr. Garadeb, aren't you? The landlord who rents Mr. Natsume's room? The master's wife? Where do you get your ideas, sir? I'm the maid. The maid, you understand. Just keeping up that charade? Ugh, this is going to be awkward. Why didn't you mention this yesterday? That you'd been selected for the jury in this trial, I mean. Well, I was told not to mention it to anyone until the day of the trial, you see. It was in the letter I received. The instructions were very clear, so I'm afraid I had no choice. I see. Anyway, Mr. Natsume, the defendant, takes lodging in your master's house, doesn't he? Yes, that's right. Although he's only been a little over a week now. And in that time, surely you must have taken stock of his character? Does Mr. Natsume look... Yes, she's racist. He's just the sort. What? spending all his time in that dark and dingy room, sporting that unscrupulous mustache. The man never speaks. Don't get me started on those shifty eyes. All the neighbors are talking about him. I've heard them, you know. People think he must be building a bomb in there or something. Oh dear. Poor Mr. Natsume. How could people say such things about him? He's just a harmless bookworm. Nothing more. Well, you just called him a worm, so... Anyway, better be careful about inviting this maid to speak. She's said enough damning things already.
Hold it!
A man's life is on the line here, sir. This will take as long as it takes. Don't get clever with me now, son. My life's on the line too, and so is my family's. Alexa, you wouldn't understand, but a laborer like me can't afford to take time off. If I don't work, I don't eat. Neither do the wife and kids. Oh, I see. That must be very hard. I go to the union every morning to find out what needs doing. If you're late and the work's taken, it's tough. This time of year, there's water and gas supply pipes bursting left, right, and center. They're after cheap labor to get the roads dug up to fix it. It's a hard slog from dusk till dawn. It is dawn till dusk. So, you were out digging up the roads on the day of... Ooh, dun, 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 dun. You were out digging up the roads on the day of the incident as well, were you? That's right. In fact, if I remember rightly, it was just around the corner from where it all happened. By that old bookshop it was. What? That's right. Mersham Street it was. On the map, there's only 3 named streets. Juror number 5, I need you to add that information to the formal statement, please. What's the point in that? Can't we just get this business over with now? Please, sir. It's important.
Objection!
There was road work being done. Those 2 statements are clearly at odds with one another. At odds? Explain. Please, don't point. It wasn't me, I swear. What? I just want to get this done and dusted. Well, juror number 3? Oh, me, sir? What do you mean? And juror number 5's words just now are extremely significant. Let's take a moment to consider the implication of what's been said on our map of the local area. On the day in question, Mr. Natsume visited this bookshop to purchase a number of secondhand books. And on the same day, we now know that there were works being carried out on Meersham Street, making it impassable. Which means the defendant's route home could not have taken him along Meersham Street and down Briar Road. Oh, yes, of course. What do you think, sir? Well, yes, you can't argue with that, really, can you? You must have had a good 2 yards or more of this pavement up. Every gentleman and gentlewoman that came along had to turn back and go the other way. So, the only conclusion is this. The defendant must have taken the longer route back to his lodgings. Yes, I suppose he must have. I suppose that must be right, eh? Juror number 3, you said the following. The man wouldn't have gone around the houses on his way back from the bookshop. But we see now that he had no choice. Yes! My lord, Mr. Judge, sir, if I may? Yes? I don't think in all good conscience that I can say the man's guilty now. Yes, I'd like to see this trial continue so we can get to the bottom of what really happened. What about you, sir? Yeah, who, me? Well, alright then. There's a hole in the prosecution's argument. It should be filled in. That's what I say. I felt like the table should have shook when he smashed it. Well done! That was wonderful. I think we managed to change a couple of minds at least. Strengthened our position somewhat. It'll prompt the other members of the jury to consider their stance as well. They'll be asking themselves if their current leanings are really right or not. Now, if only we could just identify one more clue or discrepancy that would make him stop doubting Mr. Natsume. We might be able to tip the balance completely. And Zykes is looking to bring this trial to an early conclusion, so we have to prevent, by whatever means we have at our disposal. Thank you, counsel. On with the summation. Yes, my lord. Whether it's digging up roads or digging up the truth, you gotta see it through to the end.
Hold it!
Fold it, you say? Fold what? No. What I said was, hold it. What I wanted to ask was, do you visit your books often? I like the old books they have in there, yes. I enjoy reading them over a nice cup of old tea. That's my daily routine, you see. Same thing every day, including the day you're all talking about. And what time did you visit your books on the day in question? Well, I was picking out books in there all afternoon, and it would have been just before 5 that I left. That's my daily route, you see. Same thing every day, including the day you're talking about. Are you sure about the time? Oh yes, no mistake there. I remember it well. I'm not about to forget that day in a hurry. Not after the dreadful time I had. What do you mean? Well, I was walking down Calabash Road when I slipped on ice and donked my head. It's always worse after the snow stopped falling. It's when it's most slippery. Knocked myself clean out, I did. I really thought my number was up. Wait a minute. Let me get this straight. This happened on Calabash Road. That's right. I live on Cornpipe, you see. Heading down Calabash Road is the quickest way for me to get back home from your books. Juror number 6, I must insist. If you add that information to your formal statement, it may very well be extremely significant. Sorry? Extremely sick? No, I'm quite alright now. You've changed 2 of the jurors' minds. Alright. It's time to turn the tables.
Objection!
2 statements clearly show a flaw in the juror's reasoning. A flaw? What are you talking about, counsel? Well, juror number 2? Juror number 6? My, whatever do you mean, sir? I think perhaps the old man didn't hear you. Unbelievable. It's not like I was loud or anything. There's at least one fact of which we can be sure here. The bookshop receipt found in the defendant's room clearly indicates that on the day of the attack, he had been to your books and purchased a number of secondhand titles. He then returned home on foot. But the man says he has no recollection of his return journey. That's correct. What he does remember is seeing someone appear in front of him on the way. Someone in a green overcoat who suddenly collapsed on the pavement before his eyes. Yes, we are aware of all this. The poor young woman was stabbed, obviously. Can we really be sure of that? My, whatever do you mean? I'm sure you heard juror number 6 account of what happened to him that day. That same afternoon, there was someone else apart from the victim who was wearing a green overcoat and who fell over on the icy streets in the neighborhood. My goodness, you mean... That's right. I'm referring to, of course, the hard of hearing juror number 6. Are you really suggesting that the person in the green overcoat whom the defendant saw collapse in front of his eyes was a jolly old gentleman at the end of the bench on the end of the bench here with me today? That is entirely possible, yes. After all, the old man has somewhat similar build to the victim. Well, look at that. My goodness me. Sorry, you need a pee? And crucially, we know precisely where the old man in the green overcoat fell. On Calabash Road. Therefore, if the person who Mr. Natsume saw collapsing in front of him was in fact juror number 6, it means the defendant must have taken the long route back to his lodgings. If that's true, then clearly the crime scene on Briar Road where the woman was stabbed was not on his way home. Oh my. You idiot, you old man. If you haven't been so daft as to be roaming about there, we would have boxed this off hours ago. And really, what were you thinking wearing such a befuddling coat? What did you say to me? Is it a crime for the elderly to walk these streets these days? Is it a crime to slip over on the ice? Is it a crime to keep up with the latest styles and wear a beautiful green overcoat, is it? My lord, I do hope it won't cause any inconvenience, but... You'd like to change your leaning, I presume? I do declare that I would. I should like to call for a verdict of not guilty. And I would too. What? Is it a crime to change your mind? Is it? Well... Well, that summation examination is concluded with a rather large shift in opinion. The yeas are 2, the noes 4, so the noes have it. Not guilty, they say. Which means we no longer have a consensus among the members of the jury. Trial will continue.
Objection!
Could it seem churlish of me to drink from my hallowed chalice moments after raising an objection? Only to crush it in disgust? Pray, forgive the discourtesy. Lord Van Sykes. It seems I must retract my earlier remark. What do you mean? I mistakenly credit these jurors with intelligence by describing them as insightful. Yet we have just witnessed them failing for a cheap trick performed by an Eastern entertainer. Whatever do you mean? I haven't tricked anyone. Everything I've said is the truth. Indeed, stalwart juror number 5 was undoubtedly repairing the road as he claims. I believe you said it was a good 2 yards of the pavement which you had excavated, sir? That's right. It took me the whole day and they paid me a measly tuppence for it. Now, my learned Nepalese friend, tell me, do you have any notion of the distance that 2 yards represents? Well, if I'm honest, I don't have a clue, no. 2 yards is a little less than 2 meters. Less than 2 meters? That's not much at all. In other words, a distance readily vaulted by anyone of moderate vigor. Would you not agree, my stalwart friend? Me? Well, I can't say you're wrong, no. What? And did you perchance erect a sign to prevent pedestrians from passing the site of your works? I wouldn't dream of it. What a waste of time. No coaches would have had a hope of passing anyway. We could just turn any gentlefolk back when they came. Kids jumps right over us all the time. The accused is no gentleman, as far as I can see. I have little doubt, however, that he could spring over a 2-yard trench in his meanderings around town. With his books? Is that true? The incontrovertible truth is that the books just purchased by the accused were found at the scene. There can be no doubt that on his way back to his lodging, Mr. Natsume walked down Briar Road. And, old man, you say that around 5 o'clock on the day in question, you slipped and fell on Calabash Road. Pray, was there a suspicious-looking Nepalese behind you at the time? Oh, I, can't say as I remember. I mean, who's looking behind you when you're walking? How about a wager, my learned friend? You said it was the old man that the accused saw. Thought I would lay 1,000 to 1 against you being able to prove it. Lord Van Sykes, explain yourself, my lord. If you had such a trenchant argument up your sleeve, why in the world did you not proffer it during the summation examination? I wanted to give this young foreign student the sightseeing experience he no doubt came for. I wanted him to see for himself how the opinion of the jury is so readily swayed. But my hospitality has its limits. They have been reached, I feel. So, my learned friend, today's sightseeing tour of London is now over. What? What are you talking about? My lord. The prosecution requests permission to call its next witnesses to the stand. Granted. Bailiff, bring forth the witnesses. Next witnesses? Mr. Naruhodo, do you not remember? Yeah, we've been told on several occasions that there were eyewitnesses. Right, that's likely to be the prosecution's next witness. Alright, no matter who Van Zykes brings to the stand as his witnesses, and no matter what they say, I believe in Soseki-san. I know he's innocent, and I'll keep believing to the very end, until this battle is over. Alright, I'm going to grab a thing of tea, because my throat is already hurting, and it's about halfway through. So I'll be right back. Oh, okay. Made tea. Witnesses, please state your names and occupations for the court. Constable Royal Beat. Rolly Beat. Sa. Nothing to report on the streets, sa. And I'm Mrs. Beat. Patricia's my name, and I'm proud to say I'm this young town hero's wife. What's the story here? Well, in truth, we've not been married long. In fact, we celebrated our first anniversary only the other day. No, it was your husband I was asking about. He seems tired. I mean, that officer did tell us that, you know, the life of a policeman is very tiring. Hardly surprising. Whilst being an honorable occupation, patrolling the beat is the most demanding work in the world. Oh, really? I'm sure I've heard that before, actually. Indeed, apart from her days off, our gallant officers trudge some 20 miles a day, you know. Patrol boarding houses, pubs, collect taxes, survey the streets, check that meters are reading true, and they're responsible for keeping the streets clean and lighting and extinguishing our streetlights. There are a number of items on that list that don't sound much like policing duties at all. I wouldn't be falling on my sleep. I wouldn't just be falling asleep on my feet. I'd have collapsed long ago. But it goes without saying that a policeman's primary duty is the apprehension of criminals. Even when he's off duty, a constable is expected to investigate and resolve any crimes on his beat. For London, the London Bobby is a man of honor. I just want to imagine Lord Van Zykes. Do we have his first name? Barrack. That's how I was thinking, Baron. Like, just them in the prosecution's lobby, just like, all right, you're one of London's finest. And the guy's just like falling asleep, and a man of slumber. On the day in question, this man and his wife were walking down Briar Road in the opposite direction, and they witnessed the incident as it occurred. Is that not correct, Mr. and Mrs. Beat? That's right, sir. Isn't it, Rolly? Constable Roy Beat, sir. Nothing reports on the streets, sir. What a great witness he's going to be. Very good. I'd like to hear your formal testimonies now, please. You will tell the court exactly what you saw on the afternoon of the incident. Yes, sir. It was our wedding anniversary, and Rolly was taking me out for a meal. There was no time to change after work. Anyways, two silhouettes appeared out of the fog on the pavement in front of us. All of a sudden, one of them just collapsed on the floor, and the other scattered something before running off. Ran straight over, of course, and then went for help in a nearby police box. It was definitely that Japanese man in the dock. Rolly and I both saw him clear as day. Tucker, what do you think of this testimony? Yeah, I don't like it either. The judge thinks this is extremely compelling testimony. Oh dear. The policeman and his wife are claiming to have positively identified Mr. Natsume at the scene. If your testimony is true, the alternative course of events that you established in the summation examination will be quashed. It's death knell, in fact. because that alternative was never viable in the first place. What an unfortunate bechancing. And on your wedding anniversary, too. Oh, I know, but I still managed to go out for the evening with my man. I thank the Lord for that. Gosh, life of London Bobby sounds very hard indeed. Indeed, however, this cross-examination will be over in minutes. You may well have time to rest this afternoon. What do you mean by that? My learned friend, the witnesses saw the face of the man fleeing the scene. They are testifying under oath that it was without a doubt the accused, Mr. Soseki Natsume. And one of these witnesses is a policeman, no less, so you appreciate the gravity of the situation, I'm sure. Except that the man's so tired, his wife has to do all the talking. Enough preamble. Counsel for the defense. Commence cross-examination, please. Yes, my lord.
Hold it!
No time to change after work, you say. Are you also a member of the police, Miss Beat? Mrs. Oh, no, sadly not. It's a job for strapping young men only. Women, children, and the elderly can't even apply. I mean, I'm surprised children can apply. Well, I think you could probably see why children and the elderly can't do the job, can't you? I think Rolly looks ever so handsome in his uniform. It suits you down to the ground, doesn't it, darling? What? I just finished my beat. Pat and I were heading back to the station. I was actually planning on getting changed there. Is he talking in his sleep? This is creepy. Oh no, Rolly, I much prefer you in uniform. Sometimes I don't recognize you when I see you in plain clothes. Oh dear, that doesn't seem healthy. Kindly adhere to the point. You were going for a meal after you had finished your beat for the day, correct? That's right, sir, yes. Although, I was fit to drop, to be honest, after spending the whole day on my feet. But policing is my life, sir. As long as I'm the proud owner of this, I'll serve my city and my queen to the end. What's that now? My warrant card, sir. Proof that I'm a London copper. It has the noble founding principles of the force written on it, as a reminder to all of us policemen of our sworn duty to patrol the streets of London town and uphold the peace of the common man. Sir, and for such a noble cause, I cover 20 miles every single day, without fail and without a grumble. Because I know that the plodding of my boots is all Londoners need to hear to feel safe and secure. So, fighting crime doesn't appear to come into it then. But sir, just on that particular day, I was looking forward to celebrating my wedding anniversary. Mrs. Beat puts up with a lot being married to a Bobby like me, and I wanted to show my dear wife how much I care. Oh, Pat. Oh, Rolly. Oh, what a charming couple. Your young love is such a joy to behold. Are they younger than 16? They're older than us. If a little over the top, perhaps. And then, kindly describe what happened next.
Hold it!
Two silhouettes. That's right, they were coming towards us, walking up Briar Road in the opposite direction. Would that be walking down Briar Road? It was a rather plump figure, followed by a scrawny, thin-looking man. It does sound exactly like the victim as pictured in this print, and like Mr. Natsume. I mean, I wouldn't say not... I mean... Yes, unfortunately it does. And you're certain at the time there was nobody else nearby? Oh yes, quite certain. It was dark, but there are streetlights on Briar Road, you see. There was no one else around at all. Isn't that right, my darling? I think I hear his back cracking every time she does that. What? Yes, that's right. Of course, there was a light fog on the ground. The Briar Road is dead straight, and you can see a fairly long way down the pavement. And then there's the street lighting as well. I didn't see any other... Before sleep takes a firm hold, your answer please, Mr. Beat. Are you quite sure of what you've just said? Yes, sir. As a cop who spends all day, every day keeping watch on our streets, I'd swear to it, sir. I'm as sure as my love for Patricia is true. Oh, Pat. Oh, Rolly. Still maintaining there's no one else around other than the victim and the attacker. It's starting to seem like that must be how it really happened. It's beginning to seem like there's nowhere to run. Oh, I didn't stop Mr. Natsume, did it? He fled the scene all too convincingly. Thank you. I believe we have a reasonably clear idea of the situation just before the incident now. What happened in the crucial moments that followed?
Hold it!
Scattered something? What do you mean by that? Oh, well, I couldn't quite make out what it was at the time, but when we got closer, we realized what it was. Didn't we, darling? Yes, that's right. It was some old books. Yes, sir, the culprit had dropped a number of them, around where the victim lay on the pavement. Indeed. As clearly pictured in this photographic print. Rotten Japanese man did that when he did the deed. Let's not forget that it remains to be established that the defendant was indeed the attacker. But we saw him. It was the man in the dock, without question, sir. The mustache, the hunched back, the cat-like eyes, the taut mouth, the snub nose. Everything. Any more insults you want to throw in? That's right. He looked down at that poor defenseless woman with those terrifying, intense eyes. And then suddenly threw his books onto the pavement and ran away. I see. It's tough. It seems as though they're telling the truth here. I wonder, can I examine... Okay, I can't get the titles from these. May I remind the court that this is an ambiguous testimony, comes from a policeman and his wife. Now please, continue. Yes, sir. Straight over, of course, and went for help at a nearby police box.
Hold it!
Was it your husband who went to fetch help? No, I went. I may not be a police officer myself, but I am a proud wife of one after all. Isn't that right, my darling? Yes, that's right. I asked Ms. Beat to go. I was off duty by that point, but a Bobby's never truly off duty, of course. I felt obliged to stay and guard the scene. Very laudable, Mr. Beat. Preserving the scene of a crime is a task of considerable importance. That's why I sent Patricia, you see. And I'll take a sippy of my tea. That's why I summoned Patricia, you see. I told her where to find the right police box. Forgive my ignorance. What do you mean exactly by the right police box? Depends on a crime's location, you see. Mr. Ho deals with it. Where the woman was stabbed wasn't actually on my beat. So I told Patricia the way to the police box for the beat the incident fell under, so she could go report it. I ran there as quickly as I could and asked for help from the Bobby on duty. There is nothing more potent than a young couple in love working together, you know. And thanks to your swift response, the case was quickly resolved. The actions of two model citizens. He's really hammering in their credibility. Yes, sir. The patrician said, sir. Let's move on, shall we?
Hold it!
But surely you wouldn't have been able to see his face by the light of gas street lamps, would you? We absolutely could. Us Londoners have exceptional eyesight, I'll have you know. Right. The light from the street lamps was more than enough. And my husband already told you the fog was only light, didn't he? Yes. And what of the fog? We're famous for it across the globe, I believe. But it's an absolute menace to those of us who have to live with it, of course. Oh, it is, it is. When it's thick, you can't even see the hand at the end of your own arm. Yes, alright, I take your point. Now, could you stop shaking your husband about? Constant fog makes our eyes very sharp, you see. That's why we can tell you for sure and certain that it was that little Japanese man we saw. Can't we, darling? Yes. It was the accused, no mistake. The mustache, the hunched back, the cat-like eyes, the top mouth, the snub nose. It's unmistakable, sir. As far as this couple's testimony is concerned, there can't be any question. It was Saseki-san they saw running away from the scene of the crime. So that's it, is it? That's their entire testimony? What do you think, Mr. Naruto? Well, I hate to admit it, but on hearing the testimony, it really does seem as though Mr. and Mrs. Beats saw what they saw. Mr. Natsume running away from the scene on Briar Road that day. Yes, I feel the same. So if that's true, where does that leave us? The members of the jury are sure to call for a guilty verdict after this testimony. Kazuma-sama were here. What are you trying to say? I think you would try to find a contradiction somewhere, okay. If we can find a different contradiction. Okay. Mr. Lawyer, sir, can I ask you something? Oh, yes, of course. What is it? Well, you keep asking us all these questions about everything we've told you, so... It seems like you don't believe our testimony. Is that right, is it? Well, out with it. What? No, no, no. Oh, no, it's really not that at all. My husband's a policeman, remember? And I know what I saw. I remember every last detail. Everything. Like, oh, I know. What about the books the man dropped? I could tell you the names of every single one I could. Every single one. You dare to question how reliable my testimony is. That will do, Mrs. B. No, it won't do at all. A Japanese lawyer has no idea what I'm capable of. Even if I decide to forgive him for insulting us, don't think for a minute that Rolly will. I really didn't mean to cause offense. Please, put your husband's fists down. Perhaps you would like the opportunity to supplement your testimony, Mrs. B. Might that appease you? Oh, thank you, my lord. That would settle things nicely. Wouldn't it, darling?
Objection.
So, you're saying that there were 4 books? That's right, I remember all of them. The Picture of Monsieur Somebody, What's It Yearnings, and A Meal for Someone, and the Thingamy's Something. I'm sorry, Mrs. Beat, but there is a fundamental flaw in that statement of yours. Oh no, what flaw? Simply that, at the scene of the crime, there were only 3 books, not 4. What? Have a good look at this photographic print of the scene of the crime. As you can clearly see, there are only 3 books. But no, that can't be. I saw them. Oh, I know what it is. Yes, you can't fool me. Sorry. It's that big lump of a dead body. The lady's so large, her corpse is blocking the view of the 4th book. Let's at least try to remember that the poor woman isn't dead, even if we're insulting her size. No, I'm sorry, Mrs. Beat. But Mr. Natsume could not possibly have dropped the 4 books you described. Why not? Fascinating. And from your assured tone, something you can readily substantiate with evidence, I presume. Ah, evidence. You present evidence to substantiate your claim or withdraw it.
Take that!
The evidence is right here, in the form of this bookshop receipt. From your books? No, from their books. Yes, this receipt details Mr. Natsume's purchases that day. But as you can see, only 3 books are listed. No! Therefore, Mr. Natsume would have only dropped 3 books at the scene of the crime. Which means that your powers of observation, madam, cannot be relied upon. So, it cannot be denied that though you say it was the defendant you saw, you could very well be mistaken. Oh no, oh no, no, no!
Objection!
It's plainly evident that it is your powers of deduction that cannot be relied upon, my Lord Nibanese friend. What cannot be denied is these 2 witnesses saw the accused running from the scene. A fact you know very well you have no hope of disproving. So you've striven to avert the attention from that by dint of some inconsequential discrepancies. Would that be fair? He sees right through me. But your plan is somewhat recoiled against you. What are you talking about? It's quite simple. Let me explain with a toast. To the policeman's wife and her entirely accurate testimony in every respect. Was there a 4th book? The matter is not up for debate. At the scene of Meyer Road, a total of 4 books were most definitely found.
Objection.
But what about the photographic print? It only shows 3 books. Quite right. Only 3 can be seen in that print. Wait a minute. The lines that no. It's the 4th book. As you will observe, the 4th book was hidden from view in the original print by the victim's torso. There, you see? You see? Look at that. Look, look, look. Yes. It's just like I said, isn't it, my darling? Yes, sir. Patricia's always right, sir. I keep going back and forth on Rolly's voice. I was thinking Mr. Plinkett, but, like, I don't know. I'd studied the receipt for the books purchased on the day in question. Mrs. Beat, the titles once again, if you please. Oh, yes, of course. The picture of Monsieur somebody or other. Picture of Monsieur Lecroc. What's it yearnings? Canterbury yearnings. A meal for someone. A meal for Gabreau, in fact. As the court has just heard, the witness remembers the book titles flawlessly, save for a few minor details. Mrs. Beat's power of recollection may only be described as exceptional. Did you hear that, Rolly? The gentleman paid me a compliment. Yes, sir. Flawless, sir. Patricia is flawless. But there are only 3 books on the receipt. There's nothing surprising about that. Yeah, Ryu, you're kind of just... Clearly this photograph is which shown in this photographic print. Why would the 4th book be omitted from the receipt? It's not at all odd at all, my lord. As the photograph clearly shows, the 4th book was found in the victim's clutches. In other words, it belongs to the victim. It does not. The victim is holding her own book? I wonder what became of that 4th book. Obviously, it wasn't overlooked by the investigating officers at Scotland Yard. I have it here as evidence. You will submit that in the aforementioned photographic print to the court, please, counsel. My pleasure, my lord. I mean, yeah. Why would... I get, like, you know, there's the... Why would he take just another photograph of over the shoulder and not, like, the other direction? Let me see. It's a book entitled The Lion's Pride. I'm afraid I don't know any English literature at all, so it wouldn't be something I've heard. Wait a minute. The Lion's Pride? That's strange. I think I have heard of a book by that name before. Yeah, this was, the husband's book. Oh, look at this. The book has been badly burnt. You're right. You'd never be able to read it in this state, especially not the later pages. What a terrible waste. Judging from the scorched edges of paper, I think the damage must have occurred very recently. Let me take one more look at it, see if there's anything, like, hidden on the pages. No. I have nothing further to add. What? You seem surprised, my learned friend. But your resistance until now has been in vain. Entertaining, yes, but futile. The spurious longer route to the accursed lodgings that you tried to establish in your summation examination, and the attempted discrediting of the witness's powers of recollection in your cross-examination. Futile? I walked right into this, didn't I? You see, everything we've said is true. Isn't that right, my darling? Yes, Pat. Marry me, Pat. So perhaps the ladies and gentlemen of the jury would like to reconsider their positions? Should the court waste any more time on this Nipponese travesty? Or is the decision you have to make all too apparent already? You have heard all of the witnesses and seen all of the evidence. The trial has run its course. I'm afraid we're in a terribly precarious position. I know, but if I fight back in the wrong way now, I could very well just make matters worse. Think. What do you do now? Let me just think for a minute here. Let me just... let me chance upon this for a minute.
Objection.
I'm not done yet. No, my learned friend. It's over. The last cross-examination was your final chance to establish a credible defense, and you failed. The die has been cast. There's no more room for debate. Well, it might be over as far as you're concerned, but... Ugh, I can't think of what to say. If I may, Lord Van Zykes. It seems somewhat boorish to close down the debate at this point. Your insignificant little Eastern Isle must be a lawless hole indeed. For a lowly judicial assistant to have the audacity to intervene at a moment like this. Oh. I am, to my shame, still a very inexperienced lawyer. So you will have to forgive me, but I consider my assistant's advice essential and her opinions invaluable. Mr. Naruto. One of this land's great guiding principles is tolerance, so the court will hear you, madame. Go ahead, Miss Sato. Please. Very well. Pray, what insight can you give us? What have we all overlooked in this matter that you see fit to pursue further? Well, the court has been presented with new evidence, but only after the last cross-examination finished. And you believe that this new evidence warrants a further examination, do you? What do you think? It's just possible that this new evidence might be the decisive proof we've been waiting for. The judge is sure to ask the members of the jury to announce their leanings in a moment. And of course, he's sure to ask you to explain what the crucial piece of evidence is and why. So we must take this opportunity to examine the newly presented evidence as thoroughly as possible. Thank you. Defense wishes to present evidence, my lord.
Take that!
The evidence in question is what we can see from the newly presented photographic print of the crime scene. The fourth book found in the victim's hand.
Objection!
We have already discussed the fourth book at length. Other than it being in the victim's grasp at the time of the incident, no significance has been attached to it. Pursuing the matter further would be a flagrant waste of the court's time, as you well know. When I afforded you this opportunity, you led the court to believe that the evidence in question contained a hitherto undiscovered clue. So I must insist that you elaborate, counsel. You will identify what this clue at once. Do I make myself clear? Mr. Naruto, I believe the prosecution is trying to avoid a thorough examination of the evidence, which means you may very well be on the right track. Precisely where is the vital clue? It's a fucking burn.
Got it!
I would ask the court to observe the back of this book in question. Good gracious! It's been burnt to a crisp. So we have to ask ourselves, how was the victim clutching what is clearly an unreadable book? It's undeniably an extremely unnatural thing for her to have been doing.
Objection!
Unnatural, you say? And what of it, my Nipponese friend? Oh. Right, I can see the point. If it bears no relation to the case, there is nothing to discuss. So, should you wish to assert that this fire damage is some veiled clue as to what happened that day, pray, do enlighten us all. What truth does charred book hide? This was one of the books that was in the Garadeb household. Alright, I'll explain my theory. The owner of this book. My lord, the burn on the back of this book reveals a startling truth about the book's owner. I beg your pardon, but we already know who the book belongs to. The victim was gripping it in her hand as she fell to the floor, after all. It's obviously hers. The question of how this book came to be in the victim's hand is yet to be answered. However, as to the questions of who the book really belongs to and where it originated, the defense has very credible answers. How can you possibly? Very well. I'll play along with this futile attempt to delay your inevitable demise. But do remember, the members of the jury may well burn you if your little gamble goes awry. It was John Garadeb.
Take that!
The answer is that the book belongs to the couple who own the house where the defendant has his lodgings. A certain Mr. and Mrs. Garadeb. The landlords? And whether this is some extraordinary coincidence or some kind of fate at work, I don't know. But, of all the people in London, one of the 6 chosen for jury duty in this courtroom today is none other than Mrs. Garadeb herself. Oh my goodness. Me? I think you must be mistaken, sir. I'm not Mr. Sugaradev's wife. I'm his maid. Things would be so much easier if you would just drop the pretense. Alright then, how about a simple question for you? Have you ever seen this book in Mr. Garadeb's house? I would never presume to know all the books he keeps, sir.
Objection!
This is outlandish behavior. This woman is the accused landlady, you say? You implicate this hard-working member of the public. You besmirch her without a shred of evidence. Your actions are unforgivable. This is not mere conjecture. The defense happens to know that on the day in question, at almost exactly the same time as the victim was stabbed on the pavement below, another incident was taking place in the room on the top floor of Mr. and Mrs. Garadeb's house. A fire, my lord. Afraid to say it was. Happened in the blink of an eye, you know. Whole place filled with smoke. Couldn't see a bally thing. Didn't take long for the fire to spread, of course. Bally furniture started going up as well. Worst of it is, I lost my favorite. A book called The Lion's Pride. The Lion's Pride. By Jove, the very same title that's the subject of this debate. Oh dear me.
Objection!
This is risible. All you've told the court is that a book by the same name was involved in a fire, in which case it would be reasonable to assume that it was burnt to ashes. And the entirely unreasonable to infer that it magically removed itself from the scene of the crime. Perhaps it would make more sense if I told you that the cause of the fire was marital discord. Without going into details, it appears that Mrs. Garadeb was considerably enraged. Apparently, she continued to attack Mr. Garadeb even amid the flames. Oh, how awful. I can't even imagine being so horrid to the one you love. Can you, Rowling? Absolutely not, sir. My Patricia would never raise a finger against me, sir.